Altra has a cult following of avid running obsessives. From the roads to the trails, if you go on enough runs, you'll likely see a pair of Altras passing by you. When it comes to trail running options specifically, Altra seems to have the market pretty well cornered. The Lone Peak 7 is arguably one of the most popular offerings Altra has unveiled for the trail running scene. With its mixture of barefoot basics and classic running shoe comfort, our question is, can it provide you with the foot-healthy structure you're looking for when you're hitting the trails? Hey folks, I'm glad you're here. My name is Chris, and this is the Sons of Sever YouTube channel where there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad gear. Obviously, today we are talking about the Altra Lone Peak 7 trail running shoe. This is quite a step out of our comfort zone to a degree because of some of the specific specifications on this shoe. Now, talking about Altra in general, they do tend to lean heavily into the DNA of traditional running shoes. What I mean by that is pretty thick stack heights and a lot of EVA midsole. So compared to what we are used to when it comes to running for Eric and I, this is quite marshmallowy. But with the barefoot DNA that it has built into it, it's kind of hard for us to ignore this kind of a company. First thing that I want to do with the Lone Peak 7 is get into the specs, and then, as we always do, we're going to send things over to Eric, and we're going to back and forth with some of our likes and dislikes for this shoe and our experience in it so far. So with the specs, starting with the weight, these guys are 11 ounces. It has the Max Track outsole, which for a trail running shoe performs fantastically. It is very grippy, very rugged, very well done. It notes that the cushion is moderate. It is zero drop. It does have a wide toe box. Those are our barefoot features, but it is a 25 millimeter stack height. Just to give you a frame of reference, probably the thickest shoe that we've run in up to this point is the Lems Primal Zen, and that shoe is 15 millimeters max. So I'm sure Eric and I will both bring up the stack height in our likes, dislikes, but without any further ado, I'm going to send things over to Eric to kick our likes off.
So when it comes to my likes of the Lone Peak 7, I have put this thing through a ton of different situations. You can see from the mud and the grime that's on it that it's kind of been going through the ringer, and I have put this thing through dirt, through mud, through ice, through snow, over loose scree, and I would have to say that the Max Track outsole that's on it has performed really well thus far. I know that that's kind of a sticking point for a lot of people. They're like, oh, why don't they get a Vibram sole on it? But I do have to say that this lug pattern grips really, really well. Chris and I were especially impressed with it running on the snow together. As you can see in these clips here, it gripped really, really well. I never slipped, and I felt secure the whole time, and it has been pretty impressive for me. Now, as far as the longevity of it and its durability goes, time will have to tell for that, but so far it's held up really well. This is a dang comfortable shoe, and the first thing that comes to mind with that is its nice wide toe box and the fact that it's zero drop. So those things obviously bring a lot of comfort to those of us that like that and that are used to it. The heel is very padded, and it's very nice to slip your foot into. And then it does have quite a bit of stack height. I think it's at 25 millimeters. You've got a ton of foam in here for your foot, and it does provide a very, very comfortable ride for you. I do have a bit of history when it comes to Altras, so for my first trail marathon that I ran, I trained almost exclusively in a pair of Superior 4.5s, and I loved that shoe. But when it came time to really put the distance in and start running those longer mileage runs, I switched to a Lone Peak 5. And this is the one that I actually ran the marathon in. I ran a half marathon in it. Anytime I had to do long training runs, this is what I would go for. And it's because it has that extra stack height. I knew that I could go miles and miles with it and still be comfortable. And I think that the Lone Peak 7 has only improved since the version that I had. I think that when it comes to longer distance trail runs, Altra knows what they're doing. The Lone Peak is kind of what put them on the map, and they've stayed pretty true to form with it. Obviously there's been changes from year to year every time that it gets updated, but they're pretty minuscule, and I feel like between the 5 and the 7, besides some styling things and some little tweaks here and there, the bones of it and its DNA are pretty much the same. It's a very comfortable shoe, especially for people who want wide toe boxes and want zero drop and want a little bit more stack height so that they can take it further and further. So with all that out of the way, I'm going to send it over to Chris to talk about the things that he likes about the shoe.
Talking about my likes of the Ultra Lone Peak, there's actually a lot to like on this. I'll actually start with the outsole. I think that the Max Track outsole is fantastic. This thing is going to keep you moving forward, and the only thing that you're really going to have to worry about on that uphill is the rigor of running uphill. I love Ultra's toe boxes. I believe this is one of the models where you can select your width. So it has regular and it has wide. Eric and I both went with wide because I would rather be too wide than not wide enough when it comes to these. So I think anytime I encounter an Ultra shoe that is in regular or wide, I'll probably always go with the wide, but I really like the width of this toe box. Obviously, I'm gonna like the zero drop. I want that in every shoe that I ever use. I also think it's a pretty good looking shoe in this colorway specifically. This one was one of the more muted ones, but I think it looks pretty dang good. Performance wise, I really like this shoe. I think it performs really, really well. I run on a dirt road out in the middle of nowhere quite a bit, and I mean, it's not particularly uphill or downhill or anything like that, but it's a lot of loose and unpredictable ground, and I think that's kind of what this shoe was built, geared towards, is that kind of terrain. It definitely makes it so that the ground feels even underneath your foot. That could be good or bad, especially if you are a really hardcore barefoot person, and we'll talk about some of that stuff in the dislikes, but I think it does what it's designed for really, really nicely. Before I pass things back over to Eric to get us into the dislike section of the video, I want to talk about some affiliates. The first one is a company that would pair fantastic with your Ultras, and that is Creeper's Toe Socks. Anytime we are doing a barefoot shoe review, we are going to talk about Creeper's Toe Socks, or toe socks in general, because toe socks take your barefoot shoe experience to a whole nother level. Regular socks can be almost as bad as regular shoes, pinching your toes together. What's the point of all of that wide toe box if you're not going to use it? Not only do toe socks allow your toes to just spread out naturally, but they also allow for toe spacers when you're wearing your shoes. And if you are trying to spread your toes out, if you're newer to the process, or you're just looking to get a little bit more toe splay and wear toe spacers in your shoes, then obviously you're going to need to go with a quality pair of toe socks. Eric and I have both put hundreds of miles on our Creeper socks at this point. This is why they won the 7 toe sock brand comparison video that we did. There's a card up here that will take you over to that, but we love these socks. They're very versatile. You can use them in almost all situations: running, lifting weights, lounging around the house, hiking. If you're interested in checking out Creepers, obviously go and watch that review that we did, and then head down to the link in the description to take you over to their website. There will also be a discount code down there that you can use to save yourself some money. The other company that I want to talk about is Triplo. They're an athleisure wear company. You can use their gear for lounging around the house during the holidays to stay cozy, or in the gym. This is the Genesis hoodie. They also have a fantastic pair of joggers called the Luxe joggers. If you want to be warm while you are warming up in the gym, also a great combination, and I love the Luxe joggers for lifting in general. They also have fantastic shirts and shorts that fit well, they look good, and they perform fantastic. If you're interested in checking out Triplo, head down to the link in the description. Now, back to Eric to kick us off with his dislikes of the Ultra Lone Peak 7.
So when it comes to my dislikes, I'm going to have to preface this by saying that a lot of these are just concerns that I have from looking at other reviews of the shoe. There's a lot of people that have had some problems with this version of the Lone Peak, and I don't know if I've put enough mileage on these yet to encounter the same problems. I have certainly put it through difficult and rough terrain, but maybe just not enough miles. But one thing that is concerning is a lot of people seem to have this part of the shoe starts separating. And that's just unfortunate. That's just a build quality thing that I think that hopefully the Lone Peak 8 will be able to fix. One thing that I do not like when comparing it to my Lone Peak 5 is the way that the laces are looped through this piece of material right here. They're a little bit hard to tighten, and I also worry that if this piece breaks, that's kind of it for the shoe. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna repair that, and I need those laces in order for it to work. These are things that a lot of people have experienced, and they definitely do concern me, but only time will tell as far as that goes. So let me send it over to Chris now so that he can talk about the things that he does not like about the Altra Lone Peak 7.
Talking about my dislikes of this shoe, there's really only two, and they're pretty simple. The first one is definitely more of just an opinion, and it's not a deal breaker for me, but it's the colorway options. This was the most muted colorway, in my opinion. I think that's why Eric and I both went with this specific model, but even with that muted navy blue and white, we still ended up with this very loud, light orange outsole. I think this is calculated on Altra's part. It's free advertising, and because their shoes are so loud, they really grab your attention. So if you're not familiar with Altras and you see somebody running by in them, you're going to be at least curious. The next thing that I'm going to pick on is the stack height. 25 millimeters is a lot. It's 10 more millimeters than the thickest Bearfoot shoe that we've run in up to this point. And the reason why I don't like it is because if you've adjusted to running in low stack height shoes, it's a readjustment to run in higher stack height shoes. Now, there was no pain associated with this adjustment. It's just weird feel-wise. The whole point of the Bearfoot shoe movement and the lower stack heights is to help you to reconnect with the ground. Here's a fun fact for you. I'm going to read off of Google. The soles of your feet contain more sensory nerve endings per square centimeter than any other part of the body. Your feet were made to feel the ground. We're not advocating at all for trail running like pure barefoot. And having a bit more stack height on the trails is probably a pretty good idea. But even for hiking, Eric and I have found that our favorite hiking barefoot boots have somewhere in the 15 millimeter range. I'd love to see a future Altra Lone Peak that gets closer to that 15 millimeter mark, because I think it hits on so many other levels, but the lack of ground feel is really hard for me, to the point where when I was first adjusting to these, when I'd get done with my run, my feet were actually tingling, and I think the nerves in my feet were saying, what the heck's going on? Where are we? Now, if you're somebody who loves higher stack height for running, which is going to be a lot of people, probably the majority of people, then that's probably not going to bother you all that much. Those things aside, giving you my final opinion on the Lone Peak 7. I actually really like it. I'm not sure it'd be my first choice or my go-to for a trail running shoe if I could have any trail running shoe in the world, but I think it does its job well. It does what it's designed for, and you have to give Altra kudos for that. Again, I really appreciate the wide toe box. I definitely appreciate the zero drop. Those two things go a long way in helping you to live a more healthy foot life, but the stack height is definitely a bit of a drawback for me. Now I'm going to pass things back over to Eric to give you his final opinion on the shoe and our outro for the video.
Overall, I think Chris and I are pretty impressed with it and actually really like it, especially for those who are looking for a comfortable ride over long distances, at least right out of the box. And for our initial trials here, it's been awesome. We love the way that it grips, we love how comfortable that it is, and it's definitely a shoe that we're going to want to put more and more miles on, and we'll probably have to give you an update as to its durability. Alright, so just a few other things to mention when it comes to Altra and the Lone Peak in general. So it retails at $150 USD, and with the Lone Peak 8 right around the corner, this actually might be the perfect time to start looking at your local stores. They might have discounts going on with the 7, and we would definitely think that if you can get it at a discounted price, it's totally worth that. I know there's some concern out there with the way the Altra was bought out, and now they're doing things just a little bit differently. And with this version, the Lone Peak 7, there is a regular and a wide toe box option. Chris and I went with the wide toe box option, and I'm glad that we did. I think that the wide toe box stays true to the original. It feels very similar to the Lone Peak 5 that I've had. So if you're looking for that, definitely go with the wide version of it. And we also found the sizing to be true to size. So I'm a size 9, Chris is a 10.5. That's what we got for both of these shoes, and they fit great. As always, thank you guys so much for the view. We really appreciate it. If you found this information helpful, make sure that you like and subscribe. That really helps the channel out, and leave us a comment too. We love to try and respond to as many of those comments as possible. We want to do some toe-to-toe videos with our Ultra Lone Peak 7s. We got some other runners in mind, so look forward to those videos. And there are a few different places that you can follow along with us online. You can follow us on Instagram for more up-to-date posts about the gear that we're getting in our hands and working with. And then come and follow along with us on Strava. That's a really cool app that we're very active on, and we're starting to build a nice little community there, and we want it just to get bigger and bigger. So it's a place where you can go and log all of your workouts, all of your runs, any physical activity that you can do, you can log it on Strava. And we always detail the gear that we are using during those different activities, and we'd love to see what everybody else is using as well. So thank you so much again. As always, we will see you in the mountains.